Before a man can conquer the world, he must first conquer himself. But most people never do. Not because they are weak, no, but because they never go to war with their real enemies, their own weaknesses. That voice in their head that says, play it safe. That hesitation that paralyzes them just when they need to speak up. The need to be liked by everyone. The craving for approval. The desperate attempt to be seen as a good person. Nietzsche didn't just talk about strength. He demanded it. But not physical strength, not arrogant superiority. He spoke of an inner power, forged in solitude, pain, and brutal honesty. But Nietzsche saw things differently. To him, pain was a signal that you had reached the edge of growth. He said, every great thing begins with a battle, an internal rebellion against the person you are right now. But most people never choose that battle. Instead, they choose distraction. They numb the voice inside with dopamine with the approval of others. They sell their time, their attention, their soul just to avoid discomfort. And then they ask, why am I so weak? You can't fix that by reading a quote. You can't heal by simply writing down your feelings. The only way out is to confront something. Turn inward and call your weakness by its name. Then, without making excuses, without delay, make this decision. From this moment on, I will no longer tolerate my own mediocrity. This is the first move in the inner war. And unless you make that decision, everything else, your goals, your mindset, your identity, is just decorating the interior of a house that's already collapsing. You want to be strong? Then stop negotiating with your weakness. Stop presenting it as if it were part of your character. Stop dressing it up as empathy. Stop disguising it as humility. Nietzsche didn't care about looking virtuous. He cared about being whole. And that wholeness only begins when you face your inner enemy and decide to destroy it. Most people have no idea what their need to be liked is costing them. It sounds innocent. I want to be seen. I want to be appreciated. I want to be accepted as I am. But that is the first link in the chain that makes you a slave. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, the instinct to conform, to obey, to keep the peace. And it's no surprise. From the moment you were born, you were trained to obey that instinct. Praise and punishment taught you how to fit in. Social media turned your self-worth into a scoreboard. Now you're afraid of being misunderstood, unloved, forgotten. But this is what Nietzsche truly understood. If you want to be free, you must be willing to walk alone. You have to be willing to break free from the comfort of approval, from the urge to stay silent. Because the person who stays attached is the person who can be controlled. The moment someone realizes you care what they think, they own you. They start shaping your steps, your choices, your voice to fit their expectations. But here's what they'll never tell you. The very people you're trying to impress are lost themselves. They're clinging to their own illusions. Their opinions don't come from clarity, they come from fear, insecurity, and the desperate need to protect their fragile identities. And when you make them your guides, you're not just being polite, you're letting the blind lead the blind. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means clarity. It's knowing when to care and when to let go. It's treating your energy, your vision, your mind as sacred, and not everyone should have access to that. Nor should they. Because if your identity is shaped by the approval of others, it will be hollow. It will become whatever gets the applause. But an identity shaped by detachment becomes sharp, simple, and unstoppable. So next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to shrink, to soften your truth just so others won't feel uncomfortable, stop. Ask yourself, who am I really trying to please here? Them, or the old lie that told me I need their approval in the first place? Then walk away, say nothing, walk in silence, in power, in detachment. That's where the war is won. Emotional debt is the silent killer of potential. It doesn't look dangerous. Sometimes it looks like maturity. Sometimes like keeping the peace. Sometimes it looks like staying connected to people who drain you, listening to problems that aren't yours. Sacrificing your time, your energy, even your truth, just to avoid conflict. But behind the smile, Behind the polite nods, a bill is building, and the cost is your strength. Nietzsche sensed that truth long before we even had the words for it. He told us that morality, especially the kind based on guilt and obligation, is a tool used by the weak to control the strong. But they don't do it with force, they do it by shame. The moment someone senses you feel guilty setting a boundary, they've already won, because your kindness has become your own prison. Think about it. How many times have you wanted to say no, but said yes instead? How many times have you ignored something because it made you uncomfortable, but you didn't want to seem rude, difficult, or selfish? This is neither kindness nor virtue. It's fear wearing the mask of virtue. And the more you do it, the more you borrow from yourself. You owe explanations to others. You owe time. You owe loyalty, silence, even forgiveness. So what happens when you finally can't take it anymore? They say to you, you've changed. You've become cold. You weren't like this before. But here's the truth. The old you was never really you. This is neither kindness nor virtue. It's fear wearing the mask of virtue. And the more you do it, the more you borrow from yourself. You owe explanations to others. You owe time. You owe loyalty, silence, even forgiveness. So what happens when you finally can't take it anymore? They say to you, you've changed. You've become cold. You weren't like this before. But here's the truth. The old you was never really you. But here's the problem. The old you was never really you. It was a mask shaped by what others wanted from you. A mold woven with emotional manipulation over the years, shaped into whatever anyone needed it to be. You couldn't even tell where you ended and they began. And now, breaking that bond isn't easy. Because this debt is psychological. Since childhood, you were taught. Your value depends on how compliant you are, how little burden you are, how useful you are. So when you finally say no, when you cut the tie, you feel like you've betrayed them. But this isn't betrayal. Healing is remembering the you that existed before you had to be everything for everyone. Freedom doesn't start with the outside world. It starts with clearing the accounts inside, not just with others, but with yourself. You don't owe your peace to anyone. You don't owe anyone an explanation. And you don't owe anyone a promise to bring back your old self, cut the ties, close the accounts. Because the moment you stop carrying the burdens of others, you realize you were never weak. You were just crushed under the weight of things that weren't yours. And something happens. That change begins when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop offering your presence at a discount. That's what strength is. And it begins the moment you become unreachable. But this doesn't mean being arrogant. It means being conscious and disciplined. Because what most people mistake for a bond is just access. And when you cut that access, the masks fall away. Nietzsche didn't try to please the herd. He aimed to surpass it. He said the crowd doesn't fear monsters. The crowd fears individuals whose approval has lost value. The moment you stop explaining yourself to those who refuse to understand you, you break a centuries-old pact. It's a silently signed contract. You must diminish yourself to fit the crowd's mood. But being unreachable doesn't mean disappearing. It means building immunity. Immunity against manipulation, against guilt, against sacrificing your clarity just to keep others comfortable. This is the point where you stop carrying other people's emotional burdens, where you stop trying to look good to those who never ask how you really are. You ignore the bait, the words meant to provoke you, the silence used as punishment, the drama trying to pull you back into your old role. The moment you stop reacting, you become unpredictable, and the unpredictable person can no longer be controlled. There is power in mystery, silence, and distance, not because you're hiding, but because you realize not everyone needs to know who you are. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your transformation. Not everyone has the right to your energy, your time, or your attention. When you become unreachable, the right people find their way. The wrong ones reveal themselves, and finally, you can breathe without being watched, judged, or drained. Because you no longer serve, as a function for others' emotional needs. Let the calls go unanswered. Let the messages stay unread. Let the world wonder what you're doing. This is not loneliness. This is freedom. This is the kind of power Nietzsche described. Not domination, but detachment. Not noise, but sovereignty. People fear losing control over you because you no longer react. You don't get angry. You don't explain. You don't defend yourself. You simply walk away. But this is not anger. This is a decision. The quietest yet most resolute way of saying enough. Nietzsche knew true power is shown not by fighting, but by not responding, by refusing to be worn down. Because control depends on your guilt. Anyone who wants you to feel bad for setting boundaries is trying to use you. They turn your kindness into a weapon against you. But you're no longer on that stage. You no longer seek applause in that rehearsed play of roles. There's no audience. There's only you. And your silence in this detachment may be called coldness, arrogance, selfishness. Because you no longer need to be understood, and that drives them crazy. But it means you're on the right path. Manipulation only lives with your participation. When you stay silent, the play ends. True freedom doesn't ask for applause, approval, or a closing speech. You just leave. Emotional detachment is not an ending, it's a real beginning. You no longer owe anyone an explanation. You don't have to defend your boundaries. You don't have to be accessible to those who don't deserve your energy. And when that moment comes, the stage clears. Manipulators, narcissists, those who always try to pull you back, are left empty-handed. Because you're no longer gone. You're free. You're not tired. You're not angry. You've just finished. And this is the power Nietzsche described. To rule not by shouting, but by silence. The more you've stayed silent, the freer you've become. Because you no longer respond to the games. You respond with silence to those who love you only for their own needs, to those who waste your energy. Behind this detachment, one thing becomes clear. You've saved yourself. And now you don't have to convince anyone, nor change yourself to be loved. This silence is not weakness, it's sovereignty. You no longer waste your energy on broken systems, broken relationships, endless explanations, or the never-ending cycle of seeking approval. Because your power is finally coming back to you. You avoid unnecessary conversations. You're not shaken by others' judgments about you. You no longer feel obligated to explain yourself correctly. And this peace comes from within, not from outside. That's why those who tried to break you come back not with love, but with curiosity. How did you do it? How did you stop needing us? How do you stay so silent yet so strong? But you're no longer here to explain. You're not here to save, convince, or change anyone. The old you wanted to be understood. The new you doesn't mind being misunderstood. Because your worth is no longer tied to others' perceptions. And that realization is what truly sets you free. Don't forget to subscribe for more. See you in the next one.